Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for once again joining me for tea time. Today we have a little bit of misty morning, and that is it. I hope you're joining me with your cup of tea, cup of coffee, maybe something harder as I always say. Today we're going to be talking about the BCN rankings, the awards, as they say. Before we go any further, I want to say that if you haven't downloaded any of my ebooks as of yet, go check them out over at JCristina.com/books. Once again, JCristina.com/books. Today's rankings or today's data is for the closing of last year. So we get a glimpse of how the different camera manufacturers are doing. Are they doing well? Are they not? So that is what we see when we look at the BCN awards. Now, if you guys don't know what the BCN awards are, basically it's a firm that monitors the market in Japan, the retail market. So it takes a look at all of the sales, camera sales, but they also do other things, basically all technology. Today, we're going to take a look at the fixed lens cameras as well as DSLRs and mirrorless, and maybe we'll touch on the video cameras and maybe action cameras also. But the majority of you guys are going to want to know, how is the mirrorless business doing for the different manufacturers? Who's on top? Who's on bottom? Are they coming up? Are they going down? Or are they just staying stable? What is going on? Now, even though the BCN rankings are for Japan, and all of those numbers come out of Japan, and they're not for Asia and Europe and the US, Japan is like a petri dish, okay? If we take a look at how they are doing, it is pretty damn close on how the entire globe is doing. Not exact, but when you boil it all down, it is pretty close. So what the BCN rankings does is it gives us a measure, a barometric measure, let's say, just to see what direction the barometer is going for the industry in totality, as well as the different manufacturers. So to start out with, we're going to take a look at the fixed lens cameras. Now, these are all of the point and shoots out there. Some of the manufacturers have stopped even making point and shoots, so they're not going to be on the list at all. But even though this is a small market and it's being devoured by all of the smartphones that we see out there, it is still an important market for all the manufacturers. And the reason being is they make money with these small fixed lens cameras, these compact cameras. But the problem is a lot of the manufacturers don't see that anymore, and they're seeing that devouring of their business by the smartphones. So they have kind of cut ties with the fixed lens market. The problem is I think they're cutting off their nose to spite their face. Well, we're going to take a look at some of these numbers right now, and you be the judge. So to start out with, we see that Canon is number one. They have 34.1% of the market in total, whereas Sony is in number two with 23.1% of the market. And finally, Fujifilm is in number three position with 11.6% of the market. So you probably ask, well, where is Nikon? Where's Casio? Where are the other cameras? Well, they didn't make it to the list, okay? So they're not selling enough at all. Now, as far as Nikon, they are not even doing these point and shoots anymore. And I think that's probably not a smart decision, but like I said, I'll let you be the judge. Now, when we look at last year's numbers for 2020, we can see that Canon has dipped a little bit, whereas Sony is actually increasing their market share, and we see Fujifilm kind of staying the course. I think this is very interesting because as we move forward, we see that Canon has closed one of their plants, one of their factories, and that factory deals with integrated cameras or fixed lens cameras or compact cameras. By closing that, I think there's going to be less created or less manufactured by Canon, and I think these numbers are going to become worse on the Canon side, whereas we see Sony is actually coming up. So we'll be watching this as we move into 2022, as we do the numbers for January, February, March, so on and so forth. But we can speculate that Canon is going to slightly do worse when it comes to the integrated market or the fixed lens market, compact market going forward. Now, we know that the compact market is only making up about 36% of the total cameras shipped and a value of about 15%. So even though it is a small amount at this point, it's still a good amount to be able to bring in. And I think the camera manufacturers that are hanging in there, in that compact arena, I think are going to do well going forward. Because as I reported a couple of weeks ago with the Fujifilm Instax, a lot of people are going lo-fi. They're getting into these lower end cameras because they just want to capture the moment and they don't want to spend $2,000-$3,000 for a brand new mirrorless camera. They just simply don't. So I think that compact cameras as such, or fixed lens cameras, or integrated, however you want to call it, I think they're going to do well moving forward, or do better than what people think. A lot of folks out there have said, oh, compact cameras are going to go the way of the dodo bird because of the smartphone market. And while I was in that camp for a while, I think at this point, I've kind of moved out of that camp. I think that compact cameras are going to have a place, just like I think DSLRs will have a place. And I'll get into that in just a second. Now, when we talk about DSLRs, Canon has increased its dominance. So they're at about 59.8% of the entire market, whereas Ricoh or Pentax is now doubling their market, sitting at about 5.8%. And finally, Nikon just drops like a rock down to 33.9%. So we're seeing that Canon is increasing, we're seeing that Ricoh is increasing, but we see Nikon dropping. This is the DSLR market. And some people will say, well, that really doesn't make too much of a difference because DSLRs are dead and we're moving into mirrorless anyways. That's not really the case. While DSLRs are declining, they do represent 26% of all shipments, of all cameras, and 18% by value. So these cameras are still important. And one of the things that could help a company, for example, like Ricoh, that is focusing, laser focused on DSLRs and does not look like it's moving to the mirrorless market anytime soon, Ricoh might be able to capitalize on that DSLR market and just take it over. If we see Canon drop out completely out of DSLRs, I don't think it'll happen. But if we did see that, Ricoh would have a major portion, a lot of money to be made from people just wanting to buy a DSLR. Because once again, they will become cheaper and cheaper and cheaper as we see mirrorless increase in price. So like I said, we see Nikon dropping like a rock. I think it's around almost 250,000 less units sold of DSLRs in the 2021 timeframe. That is a lot of money lost from Nikon Corporation. It seems that every time I report on Nikon, it's bad news besides the Z9. And even though Z9 was a really good camera that came out that a lot of people want, they're not able to produce enough to fulfill the demand, which is once again a problem for Nikon's bottom line. Now, the really good news in the DSLR awards, of course, is Ricoh. They have sold, I think it was about 120,000 more cameras in 2021. That represents a large portion. Once again, they doubled their market share in 2021. Even though it's a small portion, about 6%, let's call it 5.8%, that is a lot of money for a small corporation. Okay, so they're doing quite well in that market. And I think they just need to keep laser focused to DSLRs and not even bother with mirrorless. Same holds true with Fujifilm. Fujifilm is a brilliant company. When they saw that bloodbath ensued, when the full frame mirrorless wars happened, they just stayed out of it. They're like, you know what, we're going to stay with APS-C, but what we're going to do is we're going to just bypass those wars, the full frame mirrorless wars, and go straight into medium format because the rest of them are not going to do that. And they were right. So they're doing really well on the APS-C side, and Fujifilm is doing exceptionally well on the medium format. Once again, I think if Ricoh stays focused on DSLRs, they are going to do well. It's kind of similar to Leica, where they continue to create rangefinders, and now they're moving even more into film cameras. Why? Lo-fi. I did an entire video on lo-fi. Lo-fi is here. Lo-fi is back. Same thing with the Instax, like I was just telling you about with Fujifilm. Instant gratification. So we'll see what ends up happening with the market going forward. But Let's get into mirrorless. Now, mirrorless is what everyone wants to hear about because this is the buzzword for the last 2, 3, 4 years. Mirrorless, mirrorless. Are you shooting a mirrorless camera or are you shooting a DSLR? Oh my God, you have a DSLR? Why don't you get rid of that? Buy a mirrorless. Yeah. So according to the CIPA shipment numbers for 2021, mirrorless once again has exceeded DSLRs. Nothing surprising there. So they are shipping about 38% of all cameras are mirrorless. This represents about 67% of the total value in the market. So obviously we can see DSLRs going down and mirrorless going up. So who's on top and who's on the bottom? We see Sony coming in first place with 32% of the market, whereas Canon is coming in second place with 28.2% of the market, and OMD or OM Digital or Olympus, however you want to call them, is in third place with 12.7% of the market. Now, so some of you guys are going to say, well, where's Nikon on the list? Well, they don't rank at all. Their numbers are just abysmal. That's just simply it. They are so much lower than everybody else, they don't rank on the list. And this has held true for the last 4 or 5 years or more. And I've talked to you guys about this all the time. I get this question all the time. Why do you always talk about everyone besides Nikon when it comes to the mirrorless market? It's because they're not there. They represent such a small portion that they don't show up. This is a big, big problem, a big problem. As of today, Nikon represents about 12.7% of the market. And instead of increasing, it's either staying flat or decreasing a little, even though they've put out the brand new Z9. Once again, they're not able to produce it to be able to sell it. If they had a ton of this product, they would be able to sell it, and these numbers might come up and we'd see them bump out OMD. But it's just simply not happening. The numbers are not there for them. Now, if we look at the increasing or decreasing share volume for the different manufacturers, if we take a look at Sony and Canon, they're pretty much on par. Sony has increased their market share by 4.5%, where Canon has increased its market share by 4.6%. Now, where things get a bit ugly is with OMD. Like I said, their market share is down a whopping 10.7%. That is a problem, guys. That is a problem. I've talked to you about this in the past when a small salvage company, let's call it, bought the Olympus camera division and created OMD to try to make a go of it. It's the same company that bought Sony's Vaio, their laptop division, and they did make a go of it. So I was very bullish on what Olympus or OMD could do, the new owners. I've told you guys this in the past. The first year is going to tell a lot. What can these new owners do with OMD? If they don't turn this ship around, they are going to go out of business, sadly. Seeing the numbers down 10.7% for the year, where everyone else's numbers are going up, that is a major, major problem. They're going to have to do something over there with R&D to put out some new cameras that are more interesting to their current base. They're really going to need to sell upgrades to the current base and not try to bring in new people, because they're not going to have enough ad money to be able to bring in new blood. That's my personal opinion. Okay, so they're going to need to upgrade those folks that are current Olympus shooters, people that absolutely love OMD. And the only way to do that is to create some cameras that really spec out really high for a really good value. If they don't do that, like I said in the past, they're going to be gone. This is going to be OMD's year. If they can't pull this off in 2022, I don't think they're going to be around. So I hope these numbers turn around. We're going to report back in January, February numbers and see how they're doing. And it's my hope that they are not down 10.7%. They're actually up a little, but we will see. So like I said, Nikon is not on the list at all, obviously, because they only command 12.7% of the market. And that's basically it. And it's sad because I think that the Z series, the Z6, the Z7 are awesome cameras. And the Z9, I think, is amazing. I think they crushed it. I think the Z9 is the equivalent to their old DSLR, their D850, when it just killed it. And they sold just a crap ton of them. And I really do believe that if Nikon was able to produce a crap ton of Z9s, they would sell them. But they can't. I do believe this could play on the hearts and minds of the Nikon loyalists. When you see the company continuously going down, you lose that enthusiasm for the brand. You lose those fanboys and they move into other systems. This is what Nikon cannot allow to happen. I personally think that even though the Z9 is an awesome camera, it's expensive. So they're not going to sell a lot of them. They're going to sell them well if they can actually produce them. I do believe they should really look at the Z6 and maybe even a Z5 that can make them some solid revenue. Almost like Canon does with their M50 line. That M50 Mark II, they just sell that thing like crazy. They make just a ton of money on those cameras. Are they fantastic? They're all right, but the value is there. The same holds true with the Sony A7 Mark III, the older one. That thing just sold a ton of them. Why? Because it was under that $2,000 sweet spot for a full frame mirrorless, and they just crushed it. So I think that there is a point where you go above a certain amount and people say, you know what, I'm not paying that. I'm not buying that. That's just too expensive. So I think these camera manufacturers are going to have to figure out where they settle in to the mirrorless market. Right now, it's almost like the heyday of DSLRs, where they were just making them and just selling them and making just a ton of money. I think that's starting to come to an end a little bit, and the value, I think, is back. People are looking at things as like, you know, I need to make sure that I get value out of my money. And $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 for a mirrorless camera is just not where it's at for the majority of the people. And that's why I was saying that I think compact cameras are still something that should be considered, especially now that we see a lot of photographers going lo-fi. So we'll see what ends up happening. Most folks out there are now understanding that if they take a picture with their iPhone or their Samsung phone in poor light, it looks like shit. A lot of the photos that we see that are coming out of iPhones and Samsung phones that are not in pristine conditions, they really look like crap when you blow them up, or if you ever want to print them. If you just want to look at them on a small 6x3, 6x4 screen, okay, they look all right. But as soon as you want to print something and zoom in, they're a pixelated hot mess. They just look like crap, a mushy just wreck. And I think people are starting to notice that. So how will 2022 fare? We know that 2021 actually did quite well. It increased. The numbers of sales increased over 2020 for most manufacturers besides Nikon and OMD. So this is really quite good for the market, but we're still not doing great in comparison to how we were 4 or 5 years ago. We are down 50% in sales over the last 5 years. 50%. Our market has basically been cut in half. That is just it. So where are we going in 2022? I think that we're going to continue in this chip shortage going throughout 2022. Maybe towards the end of 2022, things will get better. But as of right now, I just don't see it. It just continues. It continues. So there's one other bonus that I want to give you in the BCN rankings, and that is with lenses. Who's on top? Who's second? Who's third? So in lenses in general, the number one position goes to Canon with 17.6% of the market. The second position goes to Sony with 17.2% of the market. And third position is Sigma with 12.6% of the market. So it is really interesting how we see that Canon at 17.6 and Sony with 17.2 are literally neck and neck. Those numbers really tell you the story when it comes to sales, camera sales. With every ILC, you need to buy lenses. So when we see that Canon and Sony are literally neck and neck, 17.6 compared to 17.2, that really tells you the direction of the market. But once again, guys, even in lenses, Nikon is not there. It goes Canon, Sony, Sigma, a third party over Nikon. Really, nothing else needs to be said there. Sadly. So once again, like I said, Nikon really needs to get it together. Moving forward into 2022, I want to see them just crush it. I want to see a new camera come out, a lower end camera for Nikon and a Z series, obviously, and possibly those Z9s just blowing up, because we know that the pre-orders are there, but we also know the supply is not. So everyone, what do you think about these numbers? What are your thoughts? In the comment area below this video, let's have this discussion and talk about it a little bit. Who do you think is going up? Who's going down for 2022? Who might be going out of business? I want to hear from you. If you enjoyed this video even a little bit, please consider throwing it a thumbs up. That would be very helpful. Also, subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. If you are, click this little bell icon over here so when I go live or when a new video comes out, you will be notified of it immediately. And finally, head over to my website, JCristina.com, where you can find all the photography tools I've invented for you and me over the years. And hopefully there's something there that you might like. And if there is, please pick it up and support me and my family. That's it, guys. I'm out of here for another vlog. Many blessings to you and your family. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.